Hello friends, and welcome to yet another video from my series Quick Thoughts On, in which I always incoherently ramble about one of the stories from the rich Star Trek universe. The next episode from the original series aired 50 years and something more than a week ago. It was called The Immunity Syndrome, and here are my honest opinions about it. The previous episode, A Piece of the Action, started quite seriously, but got more funny as the time went on and turned into a full-blown comedy in the last act. This episode is different. It's drama from the first minute till the last one, and it deals with pretty heavy subjects. Spock and McCoy discuss our morality. Later we touch on the possible meaning of existence of the human species. Kirk has to decide which one of his closest friends will be sent on a potentially suicidal mission. Pretty heavy stuff for a silly 1960s kids show with guys in funny pajamas, isn't it? The story starts very relaxed. Looks like everybody is looking forward for a little shore leave after a hard mission, but they get called from Starbase 6. The only thing they can make up are the words intrepid and something which might be coordinates. While they are trying to understand what's going on, Spock suffers from something which might be considered a stroke or something like that. He claims that he felt a disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Oh, wait. Wrong Star franchise? Well, he definitely felt the death of the full Vulcan crew of the USS Intrepid. Nobody wants to believe him, so McCoy gets him to sickbay, but a call from Starbase 6 says that the Intrepid was investigating the Gamma 7A system when suddenly they went silent. When they arrive there, they find out that not only the ship is probably gone, but the whole system is dead. Well, didn't we see it before? I mean, this is not the first episode with a dead planetary system, and definitely not the last one, unfortunately. However, this story is different. They soon encounter a strange blackness in space. It looks like a hole in space. Suddenly, they hear a horrible high-pitched noise, and Uhura faints a bit. Bones calls the bridge. Looks like Uhura wasn't the only one. A huge amount of people had the same problem and have been pumped with stimulants. Yes, this is the second episode in this season where the solution is to get high. Well, after all, this was done in the 60s. I'm just wondering why the censors allowed it. They removed most of the nudity, sex and violence, but getting high was considered to be okay. Kirk has decided to penetrate the zone. He doesn't have a love interest in this episode, but he definitely has to penetrate something in each episode, right? But it wasn't a very good idea. More and more people faint every minute, and something is sucking their energy. The energy of the people and the energy of the ship. Scotty and Spock soon find out that the normal laws of physics are reversed within this black zone, because when they try to reverse, they move forward, and going forward actually slows down their motion forward. And to make the situation worse, McCoy finds out that the closer to that something they get, the weaker they get. They try to get out, but they get pulled forward to a wonderful 1960s visual effect, an 11,000 miles long single-celled creature. A space amoeba, if you will. So, this is the big enemy, a one-celled space organism. When you try to write a story where the villain is a special effect, it usually doesn't work. And I have to say it doesn't really work even here. Don't get me wrong, I have a huge respect for them trying something like this in the 1960s, but the episode feels empty if it makes sense. To me, it has the same problem as the motion picture with Voyager. We don't get to see, or even better, to feel the danger. We are told that the mission is important. We have to be constantly reminded by dialogue and scenes of people fainting that this indeed is a problem they have to solve as quickly as possible, otherwise they will all die. Because our villain is basically an optical effect, it doesn't have any sort of personality, it is just a creature which wants to multiply. Its motivation is purely biological, which means you can't reason with it, simply because the Enterprise crew is for it just a simple energy source. So the majority of the episode are scenes of people talking, again pretty similar to Star Trek the Motion Picture, and that's not really a compliment. At least some of the dialogue we get to hear in this episode is pretty interesting. As I mentioned before, it is even suggested that when this creature multiplies, we could become the virus in its body, and they even suggest that this might be the reason for our existence. They, however, need to get out of the creature, so they come up with a plan. Somebody has to take a shuttlecraft, equipped with special instruments, take the necessary information from the creature itself, and transmit it to the Enterprise. And even though it sounds like a suicide mission, both McCoy and Spock volunteer, and we get to examine their relationship a bit. And Kirk is left with a very simple task to choose which one of his two closest friends will get to a mission on which he will almost certainly die. After a long thought, he decides that Spock is the one who's the more qualified to do it. Once inside, Spock of course finds out how to destroy the creature, but his transmissions are more and more garbled and he suddenly gets silent, presumed to be dead. Now, for some reason, Kirk is the one who gets a brilliant idea. They will use a charge of antimatter in the chromosome body to destroy the whole creature, which means getting inside the creature with the whole ship. But come on, did anybody actually believe they would not make it? Thankfully Spock survives it too, but he objects, so when the Enterprise wants to save him with the tractor beam, he thinks that the power drain would be too big and they would endanger the whole Enterprise. And as we all know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. But as a pleasant surprise, it is McCoy himself who reacts with his wonderful line, "Shut up Spock, we are rescuing you." The relationship between Spock and McCoy was always something very special. They were arguing, insulting each other, making fun of each other, but you would always have a feeling that they genuinely like each other. Their relationship was never pushed into an extreme, except for 2 episodes, if I remember correctly. One was the almost last episode, I think penultimate is the correct word, where they went straight to hating each other, but that was because they were in the past and apparently de-evolving into more primitive states. The other case was a very disturbing scene where they were trapped together inside a prison on some planet. I don't remember which episode it was right now, but I still remember the scene. It was actually pretty traumatic to see them go so violently against each other, but on the opposite extreme, they were never really friendly with each other. That's why every single moment where they expressed any sort of affection for each other was very rare and remembered. This "shut up Spock" moment was definitely one of them. McCoy might pretend that Spock gets on his nerves, but when he's in danger, they will save him even if they should die trying. Now that is friendship. But of course they survive and get out of the dark zone. We don't even get the chance to see a death of some red shirt. But because McCoy was way too emotional in the previous scene, he has to argue with Spock again. He simply has to stay true to his reputation. This episode is definitely not an action story. It's a slow dialogue-oriented episode, but that's not a bad thing. The quality of the dialogue saves the episode from being a complete bore. Whether they talk about human nature, possible human outcome, or they discuss the interpersonal relationships, the audience gets never really bored. The visual effects look pretty good by today's standards, and then you actually realize that they were done more than 50 years ago, and suddenly the level of respect to the VFX magicians gets higher and higher. I mean, I love the feeling of being impressed by effects. I haven't been impressed with any effects since the first Jurassic Park movie, and that was, 25 years ago? Jesus, I feel old now. To me, there is absolutely nothing impressive about CGI, and I unfortunately have to add, in my opinion, but to see the space amoeba, the creature looks amazing, especially if you realize the date of its creation. The Enterprise model has never looked so beautiful before or after as in this episode, where it was filmed in front of a black screen. It's still one of the most beautiful starships in the history of science fiction, and that comes from a guy who always wanted to own a huge Millennium Falcon model. There was also one very interesting effect. Every time they get hit, we don't see the usual camera shake, we see a new effect. It looks like they separated the film into its red, green and blue channels and shook each channel separately. Were these scenes shot on a free-strip Technicolor, or was the same effect achievable using standard 35mm film? Is there a film expert in the audience? But overall, the story is not very good, but the dialogues is great and the effects are amazing, so they saved the episode for me. This baby definitely deserves an above average rating. On my scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is complete garbage, 10 is a masterpiece and 5 is average, I would give this episode 8 out of 10. It's far from perfect, but it's surely above average. It's definitely highly enjoyable, and this is one of the episodes which are worth watching with both of the original effects and the CGI effects. But as always, those were just my opinions. Let me know, what do you think about this episode? Did you love it or hate it or think it's just average? Let me know down in the comment section. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and if you have some free time, feel free to watch any other video on my channel. You should see some links on screen right now. That's all for today. So thanks a lot for watching and see you in a few days. Bye.